So I've been thinking a lot about white supremacy this week, because I I've been given the honor to to facilitate a conversation around creating cultural education programs for an indigenous group. And, my job is to facilitate, not necessarily inform or bring any information to the table as much, right? But in order to facilitate, I need to kind of like have some sort of like baseline. And so for me, I've always thought that facilitating is like is a skill across the board. It's like, it's creating space for people to share. It's asking those questions people haven't been asked before. And it's like creating a dialogue that hasn't happened or folks really want to make happen, right? And that's so much of what it is. And I know that. And so I knew, right, when I knew that this was a conversation around like creating cultural education programs, that I was like, wow, I'm way in, totally out of my element, but believing that like me and my facilitation skills would be just fine, right? And so what I continued to realize throughout this like hours of a session is that and I know this, but like it continued to emphasize that what white supremacy has done is stolen all of white people's culture and made it one. And that one culture is white culture, which survives off of things that involve like the supremacist systems, right, that keep everyone in layers of power, privilege, and control and oppression. And so when you talk about culture, those things are part of white culture, which is inherently part of my makeup and the culture I've grown up on, right? And so within that is like, yes, I'm Norwegian, and I understand certain traits of Norwegian culture, right? But not necessarily a lot of components of culture. And see, like, so I can say these things, I know these things, and then sitting in this facilitation was like this continuous exercise in humility. And yeah, I think I came home and told my partner that felt pretty humiliating in some aspect. And I know that's like my ego, but I don't know how to lead or how to like ask questions around culture, because I don't totally grasp what a culture is or how important a culture could be to someone, because my culture has been allowed to exist, which is a rarity in this country, has been allowed to exist in certain aspects and then has been warped into what is white supremacy. And and part of white supremacy is making it so all white cultures are one. And so that's what it is, right? And so not even understanding the intricacies of like values that come with cultures. Like, I don't really know what those values are that comes with my culture, or or like one of the things they've talked about is like, what kind of cultural education programs do you want to have? And I'm like, I wouldn't even know how to answer that question if someone were to ask that of me about my culture. So how can I facilitate conversations about it, right? And so I think, again, that like a reminder of white supremacy that has the cultures that have those answers and that really survive off of not having privilege, power, and oppression dynamics within them have been made not allowed to be celebrated for hundreds of thousands of years. And so I'm not even necessarily privy to that information to even know it. And that has been made completely on purpose by white supremacy and supremacist systems that keep it that way. And realizing in that moment that like, oh yeah, what are my cultural values? What a great question. Something that I haven't thought about. And I'm not really sure how to think about it or how to approach it, but just something that has come up this week.